Have you ever seen a full carbon fiber bumper stiffener bar for a 92 to 95 EG? Do you even know what a bumper stiffener bar is for an EG? It's probably a pretty overlooked part. I handmade this piece entirely out of carbon fiber, replacing the factory piece, which is all aluminum or steel. So why would I do that? Who cares? This is a small little piece. Well, my curiosity started with carbon fiber a little bit ago, and we'll go into that in a different video. But this piece I thought would be really, really cool to try to make out of carbon fiber, not so much for the weight savings, but just to kind of test its strength as well. So be sure to stay tuned till the end of this video, you guys. I go ahead and get this bumper bar made, I weigh the thing, and I do a little bit of a strength test at the end. And please check out our merch. We have awesome Refined Movement t-shirts, stickers. We sure appreciate your support. So you're saying to the screen, bruh, why would you order another piece when you already got one? That's why. It's just not a good template to form a good mold from. No bueno. This one, very good. It's really the backside that we need to be using though, and what we need to be looking at. But first, I need to go ahead and test fit this thing, because how dumb would it be to do all this work and then have it not even fit? Very nice. The big thing to start doing was go ahead and sand this thing. You gotta get the surface super, super smooth and polished really, really nice so that you can go ahead and get a nice smooth epoxy. After sanding, going to 2000 grit, now to polish it. Okay, so I've polished this part up 1, 2, 5 times. Okay, so before we move on, show you the good stuff. Carbon fiber, 2x2 twill. Stuff is awesome, man. There's many different grades of carbon fiber. This one's kind of the middle of the road, most common, I guess. Perforated release film. Got some vacuum bags that I'm gonna be using. This is a different kind of release film, and this is a breather bleeder cloth. We'll get into all that. So what I was thinking is I needed to go ahead and get a template to where I could cut my carbon fiber to length and make sure that it's roughly the same each time. I didn't want to waste fabric, you know, because the stuff's not cheap, but I didn't want to not have enough either. So a template could make sure that everything is nice and consistent. And then this here is a release film, something that won't allow the epoxy to stick to it. So you see here, I covered up the holes on the bumper bar. All right, so here are the basics of what I'm gonna be using today. These are from a couple different companies. You'll see it's all, you know, it's all related, but it's not all from the same place. The main stuff going on here is this thin epoxy resin, 2 to 1. So essentially that means 2 parts of this, 1 part of this. This stuff here is a black pigment if you need like a black undercoat to something. We've got a variety of mixing sticks and these plastic scrapers here. Some cups for mixing the epoxy, which you need to do on the scale because everything needs to be super precise. And this stuff right here is a thickener. It essentially can thicken up the epoxy, something I've been doing with this guy, but you'll be seeing a video on that later. And then, of course, a brush to brush everything on. I've told you already that I've polished that part a few different times, 5 times now. But this stuff here comes next. This green stuff right here is essentially like a release wax. So we need to go ahead and coat the whole part with this stuff. That way, when we go ahead and put our epoxy down, you know, it's gonna thicken up, it's gonna start to harden. We wanna make sure that that can pop off of the original part easy enough. Okay, so now we're gonna get into mixing some stuff. Now with this epoxy measuring and the hardener, man, like you gotta really be precise. You know, I'm sure it could be off a little bit here and there, but that is really something that I found out that you want to be super precise on because it can change the time that it actually goes and hardens. And you really want to mix this thing carefully. I know it didn't look like I was mixing it very carefully in that clip. Come on, Rob. But you know, what I found out is that if you get air bubbles in that, it's really hard for them to get out, and that can actually make the mixture kind of cloudy looking. So no bubbles is a good thing. You see, the whole idea is you want to get everything down into the little crevices and That's why I added that thickener, because you see how it's got that lip, you know, kind of a more vertical part to it on either side. I don't want the epoxy falling down into there, you know. I want it to stay on those sides too. So we got to let this tack up a bit before we put our carbon fiber down. But it's looking good. So what's happening now is it's kind of a hurry up and wait. The epoxy and the hardener need to work together, and it needs to actually start to harden. So it's gonna tack up, it's called. You can kind of touch it, it feels tacky, you know? So I gotta wait to get to that point. Could be 30, 40 minutes, could be even an hour. It depends on the outside temperature and all that stuff. But so while I'm waiting for that to happen, let's go cut the carbon fiber. Here we go, cutting the carbon fiber. I ended up cutting 5 layers of the stuff. And really a trick here is using masking tape. Cutting carbon fiber, it's crazy, man. They are just the thinnest little fibers. There's like 1,000 carbon fibers to each fiber, if that even makes sense. Like, it's crazy how thin they are. And so if you go ahead and cut it and you don't have that kind of masking tape to work off of, the fibers can start going everywhere and the thing will start unraveling and it's a total freaking mess. So I ended up cutting 5 layers of the carbon fiber. I'm not quite sure if I'm actually going to use all 5 just yet or not, just to be honest, but we'll see. 4 or 5 for sure. All right, so update. This guy right here is starting to tack up good. You see how it's laid down super smooth. That's what we want, man. Before it had kind of those brush stroke bristles, you know, going through it. Now it's getting super, super smooth. Just to test an area. It's not quite there yet. It still moves around too easily. It comes off too easily there. So we still got a bit of waiting to do. And that stuff was the breather bleeder cloth. We'll go ahead and get into that a little bit later on. You'll see what it's used for. Okay, now this stuff is called perforated release film. You see here how it's got all these little dots? It's perforated. All these little dots here is what's gonna allow the extra resin to kind of pull up through here and then go down and get stuck in the breather bleeder. That way we don't have extra resin in our part. So most of the materials are cut there. I just put them off to the side. And lastly, cutting this perforated release film. I definitely found it's good to have everything ready so that you're not scrambling come the end when you did put it all on. Okay, time to start laying down some carbon fiber. See how the epoxy is nice and smooth? When I go ahead and touch here, got that little bit of tack. Now, when we're picking our carbon fiber, the layer that's gonna go on the bottom, on the part itself, needs to be the one that looks aesthetically the best. That's the part of the carbon that you're gonna see. So I need to go ahead through these and see which one I think looks best. Okay, here's the one I've chosen. It's so crazy, you know, there's so much prep to get to this point. I'd imagine it's kind of like painting a car, you know, it's all in the prep. But so the carbon fiber, like, I even studied that piece before I put it down, you know, because it truly is the most aesthetic. You can see the basic outline of the shape. Like, that's the piece you're gonna see. So you wanna be super happy with it. You don't wanna have any little hairs or this or that sticking out. I went ahead and laid down a few different pieces, and then I went ahead and mixed more epoxy. And added the hardener, of course, because I didn't want the epoxy and hardener to get too far along and get too hard and not be able to spread out smoothly on top of the carbon fiber layers again. Like, you don't want to be rushing with that stuff. Like, you don't want that stuff to get too hard. You don't want to rush it. It's just a balancing act with all of this stuff I found out. So then I just keep laying down the carbon fibers. What I'm doing there is studying the angle of the fibers. When you get up close to it and look, you can actually see that all carbon fiber kind of points one direction. And one way to add strength other than adding a bunch of epoxy and a bunch of layers, is actually to turn the carbon fiber so that the angle of the fibers are pointing the opposite way. I hope that makes sense. Like, you kind of got to be in front of it to see it, but you lay them down in such a way to where they are opposing each other, and that way you can actually get a stronger part from the get-go just by doing that. If you lay down all the carbon fiber going the same direction, it will still have strength to it, but it won't be as strong as it could be if you lay down the fibers going the different ways. But so essentially, it's the same process. Just like keep putting the epoxy down. You put the carbon fiber down, you kind of press it on in with the brush, getting the top layer to stick, and then you go ahead and get more epoxy and kind of lay it on the back. Get your next layer of carbon fiber. Push it on down in. They call it stippling, I think it is. Push it on down in, and then just keep on doing it. Okie doke. 5 layers of carbon down. Got all the layers there. See the piece kind of molded. Here's my perforated release film, because it's so perforated. Look at all those perforations. Hee hee! Alright, so the last little bit here is to get this guy in the vacuum bag. I went ahead and put this perforated release film on the back, and I'm wrapping it up in the breather bleeder. The breather bleeder is there so that extra resin can go up through and get stuck in that, going through that perforated release film, but also so that, I believe I'm saying this right, that there are gases coming out of this thing. Not like gas, like gas station gas, but like, I don't even know, guys. I'm not a scientist. But essentially, you want to have the breather bleeder there. Trust me. You put it in the vacuum bag. This little extra bit right here, I'm going to put in as a pathway to this guy, where I'm sucking the air out. That way air can come up through here still. So I'm told. Seal it on up. Science. Whoa, that's so cool. Dudes, check it out, man. I know it's just in a vacuum bag, but I'm so excited. This is looking really, really good. So again, man, it's like a hurry up and wait game. Like, I did all this cool work, but now we just gotta wait. This thing's gotta cure for at least 24 hours. I'm probably gonna let it go longer just cause, you know, I just don't wanna mess with it, man. I really, really have high hopes for this thing. So, you know, who knows? We'll see, but I'll pick it up in a couple days. Okay, everybody. So 2 days later, here's what we're left with. You can see in there how it's got some of the extra resin that's soaked up through. So that's really, really good sign. And definitely the mold has kept shape. I can see the part through the breather bleeder cloth here. So let's go ahead and take this thing out. Oh my God, as it's going on. I really just wanted this thing to come out super perfect. Okay, so now I know it's super tempting to want to just rip this thing open and be like, ha ha ha, let's see it. What I am gonna do is we had this release film here on the back. You remember how we had taped up over these holes here? What I want to do before I separate this thing is go ahead and put some masking tape around here. That way I know exactly where I want to cut, because obviously I still have to trim this thing. And with that done, I want to go ahead and open up these holes here. So I go ahead and peel off all that release film, and that worked perfectly. The epoxy stayed in there, nothing spilled out. So I felt comfortable to go ahead and get the drill out and drill into my new carbon fiber piece. Yeah, that's easy, right? And then go ahead and cut it. Oh yeah, that's super easy too. Let me just take my Dremel to this carbon fiber piece that I've spent a good amount of time working on. Let's just cut it up. It was super nerve-wracking, but I got it done, and definitely using the metal template for the top before releasing the thing was the way to go, because it gave me my shape perfectly. I was able to trim around it without having any fear that I'm gonna, cut into the top of this thing and wreck the epoxy on the top. So then I just kept sanding up. I went ahead and sanded in the middle holes there, and yeah, that was it. So naturally, this being my first go at this thing is not perfect aesthetically. It has a whole bunch of flaws in the finish. Things that I think I can actually go in and start to sand down, smooth that out a bit and maybe buff it back up with a nice polish. All right, now let's see how much these things weigh. That one's the original piece. There's the carbon fiber. It's the original bumper bar. 194 grams. That's all aluminum or steel, I'm not sure what it is, but 194 grams. The carbon fiber piece, 40 grams. Yo. So that's a huge weight savings. I mean, obviously we're talking about grams. We're talking about a very light part to begin with. But think about it in the scale. That demonstrates how light and how strong the carbon fiber can be. So here's the original piece. You see how it flexes. I'm not putting all my strength into it, but it flexes pretty good. It's the carbon piece. Maybe a little bit more deflection to it, but I swear it's about the same. And then look at the thickness of the two. The carbon fiber piece is actually a little bit thicker, but with a quarter of the weight. Just to give you an idea on the deflection of this thing, here's the stock piece. I'm gonna lift my epoxy hardener here. See how much the piece bends. Put it down. Then the carbon fiber piece. Hey yo, not bad. So I've been posting some of my progress stuff to the Refined Movement Instagram, and someone had said to me, carbon fiber, it's like the hardest simple thing to do. And my God, that was like the perfect description. You would think, after watching this video, oh, you just do this, do this, do this. That's done, easy. I can do that to any part. That's what I thought too for a hot second. But as I got into this and as I've done it, I can really honestly say there are so many little detail things that you have to follow and try to get better at. Temperature comes into effect, the humidity, how well you mix the stuff, not getting bubbles in it, the way you lay down the fabric, what angles, oh my gosh, man. Then the vacuum bagging, it sounds so simple, but it really is a process to be studied and practiced. This has been a ton of fun to make this piece. I've never seen one of full carbon fiber out on the market. I know there's some aluminum pieces and stuff, but I would love to be able to get to the point where I could make these and feel confident about, putting it out there in the market. So I sure hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. Thank you so much. Subscribe to the channel if you will, please. Check out our Instagram and pick up some merch. We appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I'll talk to you in the next one.